you see, in the past couple of days, we've seen mortgage rates kind of plummet. I would love
We
to have had
have.
slide here
I
today. We
know.
got one of our clients got a approval on a
Yeah.
5.875 interest rate. I was like, what?
I know. I couldn't believe it.
Did have some points, but
Yeah.
but still, incredible. And we're seeing a lot of uncertainty in the market, in the bond markets, in the mortgage market, and then with what happened on Friday in the stock market, I think it jolted the Fed to. Really, they have no choice to act at this time. Chris, you follow the markets at all?
To some extent, not as much. And my real estate experience is more tied to uh, the installation and licensing of cellular networks within major structures.
Oh,
When
Okay.
I had been working for Extenet Systems, so putting the networks in buildings like the McCormick Place expansion, Fiserv Forum up in Milwaukee, the Empire State Building.
oh, that's cool.
Just
Yeah,
name
so
drops the Empire State Building like
well,
it's nothing.
well, McCormick Place too.
Yeah. What a humble brag.
Well, it's it's good to be able to look and see that the technology is going in so that the public, the customers, the residents, the guests can get the services uh, that they want and need these days. But
So, were you the guy behind infecting us all with 5G? What kind of legal issues come up on putting together these cellular contracts?
well, it's really just with the business I was working with up until last year. Um, the negotiate first finding the the locations that will agree and understand the value add that installing the.
So, almost like a real estate perspective.
Yes, there's a definite real estate perspective, and you're going into at the time I left Extenet last March, we were in the process of contracting uh, for rebuilding those existing MGM properties that we previously had networks in, and doing the contracting to build in the rest of their properties. So again, you have higher demand. A place like the MGM Grand or the Bellagio or um, National Harbor, where you have these large properties, people are going to enjoy themselves, and they want to be able to connect. Everything these days is connected, and the issue with the 5G was in large part the issues of, one, the signals don't penetrate as well, don't travel as far at the bandwidths, and the densification that you need to provide service in with all the devices that are trying to connect to the networks. There's only so much bandwidth. So 5G, while it sounds scary to some, and people don't know or understand, as long as people want to keep using their mobile devices, now a large number of residential and businesses are going to um, their Wi-Fi being routed through the um, the cellular services, that 5G upgrade is necessary for them to be able to have their devices function as they really want them to.
Sure, and that, I'm sure from a technical standpoint, scientific standpoint, all that aside, your main focus is on negotiating those contracts, making sure your clients are protected, and kind of identifying great, maybe possible sources like the Empire State Building.
Well, that one we had before I got there. But it's very interesting when you're dealing with properties like that, properties like the Letterman Fine Arts out in the San Francisco area, where they want to cover an entire campus. So you not only are having the engineers work on the designs for the buildings, but also for providing exterior coverage, or places like the USDA headquarters in Washington, where it's very hard to get the outdoor coverage and access. So the hoops you need to jump through to mount on the rooftops, to how you need to shroud those so that they're maintaining the aesthetics and the looks, and all of the different groups that you need to get approvals for, um, can be very, very interesting, very challenging at times. Um, but I
Well, does what you do you ever interact with those groups? And I don't even know if they're loud anymore. I know in the beginning they were very loud about 5G, blah blah blah. Did what you do have to do with any of that? Like choosing locations where you wouldn't have that? Or was there a strategy involved?
No, when I was with Exonet, that didn't come across my
Yeah, okay.
my plate. I do, and I have seen locally where different groups have come out, and there was an instance at the chapel location in Mundelein, wanted to put in what in the cellular area would be referred to as a stealth antenna, a flagpole with the antenna panels mounted on it, and there was a lot of objection that was raised. Different groups came in and spoke to the neighborhood, and eventually the plan was dropped, and they looked for another location within their target triangle.
You said you did work with the MGM Grand. Do you have to go out for that stuff?
No, I was in office, except when we got to COVID, and I was in my house,
Aw.
working at the kitchen table like so many other people.
Well, that's not quite as fun.
No.
Dick, speaking of
Might be cheaper.
devices, did you ever end up getting your phone fixed?
I did. I
You did?
love
They
it.
came to your house?
It's perfect. They
Oh,
came
that's
to
so
the
cool.
house and gets it. She comes, she knocks on the door. She says, "Give me your phone." I give her my phone, and she says, "I'll be back in 20 minutes." I'm like, "What? You'll be back?" She goes, "Yeah, we do it in the van." I'm like, "Oh." I give her the phone. 15 minutes later, she's back. I have a screen now. It's perfect. I don't
Beautiful.
cut my finger on the glass shards as I go over it. So, yeah. So that was our cellular story. Last week I had a catastrophe. As I was trying to get some exercise, my phone goes flying out of my rear pocket and smashes on the concrete because someone was being polite.
Mhm.
That serves you right for letting someone be polite.
How dare you?
Anyway, I don't have a market minute this week, by the way.
What?
Yeah, no, I left it at home. So my daughter runs the market minute for me. She takes all the data, she uploads it to the computer, she puts it out. She does a great printout for me, and then I have it. And I
Wow.
always bring that sheet in. That's what I do the market minute off of. And she did it this time. So, but I screwed up. I had an early morning appointment. We had photos on a new listing that's going live this tomorrow. And I had to meet the client to make sure everything was all photo ready, make sure everything was decluttered, depersonalized. And unfortunately, I ran out the house without my market minute. But without having the actual numbers, we can tell you that right now the market is hot. It is, there has been no slowdown. We are seeing very good properties are selling still, obviously, much over asking. Average properties are coming in usually about kind of like asking, and sometimes maybe a little bit lower. And then properties that do need a lot of work, they are struggling a little bit still.
Sure.
So it's not like back in March, April, and May, when it didn't matter what you put out there. You remember the memes? The memes of someone's post a picture of an outhouse and it says, highest and best due by Sunday.
Uh-huh. And there were offers.
And there were offers. Yeah, exactly. So at some point, this is the end of the season, and
Allegedly.
allegedly, and there should be, a lot of times the buyers start to trail off as we get closer and closer to school starting, because they want to be able to buy their house and then move in before school starts so they can register their kids and they can start in the new school right away. But there's a lot of and we're noticing a lot of last minute people who are trying to get their houses on the market right now. So there's a big crunch right now. I think our logistical staff is crazy trying to keep up with all of the different new listings and new photo appointments to make sure everyone gets on the market in time, because they don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Once that school starts, it's going to slow down. It's going to probably continue to taper down until probably November, and then it'll be almost dead, and then pick up back in February.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of opportunity within these next couple of weeks, though, like you just said, between the last minute listings that are going to be entering the market, the slight dip in the interest rates across the board. I am seeing quite a bit of opportunity. And like I said, I've had more phone calls these last couple of weeks of people just like, I'm ready. Let's just do it. Let's just get it over with.
Yeah.
I waited all summer. Things didn't go the way I was hoping they would. I wish I hadn't waited. I can't wait anymore. I got to go.
And, a lot of people want to try and get this done before the election season.
Oh, yeah?
Because of some fear of uncertainty. Speaking of election season, Chris, we're going to get into a full featured segment on you at the top of the hour. But Chris is running for office for the Illinois State Representative District in the 59th District. What does that cover, Chris?
The 59th District is sort of a long and narrow district. It runs from Park City in the north through a part of Waukegan down into parts of Libertyville, parts of Mundelein, parts of Vernon Hill, a little bit of Lincolnshire, Buffalo Grove, down to Wheeling.
Oh, wow. A lot of different walks of life.
Yeah, it's a very interesting,
a variety of
very interesting
constituents.
map to look at when you pull it up
Sure.
and look at the outline.
Yeah, well, Illinois is kind of known for its kind of silly salamander maps. Do you know how they came up with the term gerrymandering?
I don't.
You don't? Do you
Tell
know,
me.
Chris?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
So it was there was a politician back in the early days, back probably 19th century, and I think he was in Boston, and his name was Jerry.
Okay.
And he had drawn a map that kind of hooked left and hooked right. He's basically trying to draw the perfect map to make sure he wins an election. And the image of the map looked like a salamander.
Okay. Oh.
So they called it gerrymander.
Funny.
So gerrymandering is, and I forget his first name, but Jerry, Mr. Jerry, and his map that stretched far and wide to make sure no voter of his was left uncounted. And if you look at some of the districts in Illinois, I mean, just absolutely crazy.
Lake Villa is the one that always throws me the most, where I feel like if I drive west, if I drive east, it doesn't matter. Somehow I'm still in Lake Villa. It's so confusing sometimes.
Well, I mean, that's a geographic map. I'm talking about political maps.
Sure.
Where the what did they call in Illinois? You don't pick your politician picks you. So there's some districts down on the south side of Chicago that lead all the way down into rural Illinois, and they do that on purpose because they take the population from the urban areas and then they make the map as far south as they can. So all those people in the south who would normally pick maybe a more conservative candidate are stuck with the more liberal candidates from the urban areas. And then there's one on the west side of Chicago. It looks like a wolf's head. Like a wolf's head open, just goes like this. We're on the radio and I'm here drawing images, but it looks like a wolf's head with teeth, and it's just like and the wolf's mouth is open and the teeth bared. That's what the district looks like.
Funny.
And for those who don't know, so most of you listening probably do know, one of the reasons that I decided not to run for office again was because I was gerrymandered. I was gerrymandered out of my district. My district used to compose of Lindenhurst, Lake Villa, north parts of Round Lake Beach, parts of Ingleside, and they district me out. They cut out my house from my district.
Oh, because you have to live in the area that you
have to live in the area you represent, right?
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Does the state house have the same requirement, Chris?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall. I do.
I think you might be able to run, and then I think you have to move in. Right. Yeah.
I believe that was a couple of years ago when they were trying to get, I believe it was Ditka to run when they were trying to get him on to the ballot.
Oh, yeah.
When he was, somebody would have to look that up and correct it. But there's something in the back of my head. Speaking to that, I think it was for the Senate. They were trying to recruit him, and he wasn't at the time. Again,
that's all right. You don't have to
so
have all
long.
that
It's so long and so so minuscule in
right.
the history that
the and the crazy thing about Illinois is almost every rule we have is because some politician wanted it to either benefit himself or smash someone else on the top of the head. Like, and when I was in office too, I saw it because we were connected closely on the county. We're connected closely with the state reps and senators, and we see it. And there's these little cliques, and someone doesn't like someone, and all of a sudden we would see a new bill presented in the Senate or the Assembly, and we'd be like, we know who that's aimed at.
Wow, that sounds exhausting.
It's totally exhausting. In fact, when I was on the county board, there was a couple of rules that they passed that I coined the Dick Barr rules because it was clear they were talking about us.
Oh, okay.
They passed a rule while I was in office. They passed a rule in our ethics ordinance that said you must be polite to the other county board members.
And that was directed at you?
Of course it was directed at me. They didn't like
okay.
how kind of brandish and outspoken I was.
Oh.
And I wasn't always polite, but I disagree. I don't think politics is a polite sport. It was never intended to be a polite sport. It was intended to be the most ability to express speech that existed. It is the most protected speech. And that's why most you'll see in the chambers of the federal House and federal Congress is that they can literally say anything they want. They can almost even be libelous because their speech, the importance of being able to hash things out through communication is the highest form of speech in our country. So coming out there and saying and sometimes it leads to people saying ludicrous things.
Sure.
But if you look back to our founders, they used to scream and argue and defame each other because they were fighting out important issues. And that's how I feel too. I didn't go to the county board to make friends. I went to the county board to make a change, make a difference. And I'm happy to say the things that I wanted, people told me I would never get done, and we got done. First year I was in there, we passed our first zero increase tax levy ever in the history. But I can only go back 20 years because I'm not going to research at 21 years. And then a second thing I did, helped to get rid of county board pensions for everyone. County board members, I don't think should have pensions. You shouldn't go there in a part-time job and collect a pension. That's how I felt. And I've got a lot of enemies when I did that.
Well, yeah.
I didn't always have the votes. I'm a student of Robert's Rules of Order, and I knew some pretty obscure stuff that helped us win some things when we didn't have the votes.
Super interesting.
Anyway, so we've been talking for a long time about multi-generational housing.
We've been promising it.
We've been promising
dangling it like a carrot.
Like a carrot, dangling our promises like a politician.
Oh God!
And not delivering. So,
like a politician.
We're gonna fix that. We're gonna make good. And we're gonna talk about multi-generational housing because I think it's an important topic. And I'm glad that Chris, you're here too, because some of these policy aspects have some state connections. And one of the things here in Lake County, we don't have a lot of it. And what do we mean by multi-generational housing? Well, remember the old days when grandma would stay in the house and you were in the house and then your kids stayed in the house and maybe, half you lived on the third floor, someone set up shop in the basement, and then some people living on the main floor. Happened a lot in the city. It doesn't really happen out here. Our square footages are different. Our layouts are different. But as we talk about what we're going through with the cost of housing. Did you see the latest release, Christin, that in 2000 to buy a median house, you need only make about $58,000. Today, you need to make $108,000. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
How many kids coming out of college can go out there and buy make $108,000?
I know a lot of kids who came out of college just who have that much in debt from their student loans.
Exactly. So they don't have a chance, and that student loan debt counts against their debt to income ratio, and they're having a hard time figuring out, well, how do I get in? Now, one of the ways that we've talked about here in the past is obviously buying things that need work. Being willing to give up the best of what the Joneses have, or not necessarily need to move into the size and quality home that your parents live in, and buy a fixer-upper, buy a handy person special. You see what I did there?
A starter home.
A starter home, exactly.
But if you don't want to do that,
but you know what? And one of the funny things is, and it's not funny, I guess, is the younger generation today, and we'll call them probably the mix of the millennials and the Gen Zers.
sure. I call them zillennials.
Zillennials, thank you. Is they're more opportunity focused
Mm-hmm.
and they're more activity focused, right?
Yeah. What do you mean by opportunity focus? I don't know if I
They
agree.
love going on trips and hiking excursions and experience. I should have said experience focused.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, super experience focused. In the moment, I want to have fun. You know, that's the thing I want to do. I'm hearing a lot of, because I have several siblings in that age range, and I interact with all of their friends as well. I hear a lot of like, well, I can't afford a house anyway. What am I saving for? Might as well do the things. I'm here for
might
a
as well
good.
spend it.
I'm here for a good time, not a long time. Might as well do whatever I want because I can't afford some of those more practical things anyway. So there's almost like a defeatist, like that narrative that we've talked about in the past that like millennials will never own homes, Gen Z will never own homes. And like, they just sort of believe it without really even looking into it or trying or seeing what options are available. So they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to go to Spain,
Because they believe in the
go
noise.
wherever I want. And I'm going to have and take a trip. And to an extent, I understand it if you don't have anyone in your life who's able to kind of counteract that narrative with some facts and show you some options. And if that's truly just what you believe, I mean, I do understand the desire to just go have fun then,
Yeah, of course, we all want to do that. At some point, there's a sacrifice.
Right.
What we just reported on this last week, the average homeowner is sitting on $300,000 in wealth compared to the average renter sitting on $7,000 in wealth.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a huge disparity.
Mm-hmm.
And the Zennials might say, well, I've got cash. Well, great. How much good does that cash do you in high inflation environments?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
My home went up in value during inflation.
Yeah.
Your cash went down in value during inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why homeowners are sitting on that wealth.
Mm-hmm.
More and more Zennials, more and more, I'm going to say millennials. I don't know about Gen Z yet.
Yeah.
More and more millennials are understanding and realizing and kind of making that jump or that desire.
Completely agree with you.
To build some roots.
Yep.
But we are, unfortunately, they're making that decision at one of the hardest times to buy that we've had. Yeah, as prices continue to increase.
What is the millennial experience if not having to make some grown-up decisions in the hardest time possible? Truly.
You're a millennial, right?
I am.
Okay, fill us in. Talk us through what's the so far life of a millennial. When you were born, what have you experienced? I don't mean your life.
Sure.
What are the major world events that have affected you guys?
I mean, affected us? That's a tough question. So, I mean, we got the experience of growing up with the internet. And what I mean by that is we were growing as the internet was growing, right? So like, I remember when we got our first computer, I remember my first social media account. I think it was like a Zanga. It was like an online journal. I loved it. It was so cool. And then as we became young teenagers, MySpace became cool. As we became slightly older teenagers, Facebook became, so like as we were coming of age, so was the internet. So that was I think a very unique experience to millennials because we weren't already adults having to try and figure out how to use the internet. And we weren't kids who just grew up already knowing how to do everything because it's just always been around us. Right.
Right.
So with that in mind, part of the millennial experience, in my opinion, is one, oversharing because we didn't have those boundaries didn't exist yet.
You guys don't know how to keep a secret.
No, well, for sure. But oversharing on the internet, I mean, we just share our lives we're super comfortable just sharing everything all the time because when we were kids, our parents didn't really fully understand how much of our lives we were putting on the internet. So those conversations weren't having like they are now with parents and their kids, right? So those boundaries didn't exist. And when you're a teenager and just putting your life out on the internet, you're not thinking about like long-term consequences of like what posting maybe an inappropriate picture is going to do for your career 15 years from now when it shows up, right? So we didn't have the adult developed brain to know I shouldn't do some things on the internet, right? So we kind of had to learn the hard way, like an oldest sibling has to learn the hard way, how to navigate through some of that stuff.
What's that going to look like in, when your generation starts major political office?
I've had that thought a lot of times. And I think what I've come down to is that the public is going to have to become slightly more accepting of that over time. Because I think you're going to be harder and harder pressed to find grown, full-blown adults who haven't made some kind of mistake on the internet as a teenager. Because when you're a teenager, you're loud and wrong all the time, but on the internet now.
Yeah, not
You
just in
know?
your neighborhood.
Right. But and as the millennials, we didn't know how to navigate that. And our parents didn't know that they needed to have us navigate that well. There just wasn't a full-blown understanding of that now. Now we as millennials who have children, we're having that conversation with our kids young, right? Where I'm very cognizant about what things I put on the internet when it comes to my kids. And one day when they have social medias, if they choose to have one, I'll be very adamant about teaching them what they should or should not be putting on there, right? So that's just one aspect of it, right? But
Hold
as
on,
far
I want to
oh, sure.
touch on that.
Yeah.
Because last week I took Reagan and Jonathan out. We went to Christoph's. We did some go-karting.
hmm
Then we went to Dogs and Suds, had a great time.
Yeah.
Had a big band there, like a Glenn Miller orchestra style band. It was a really good time. I took a selfie, and it was a happy, fun selfie, the three of us. And then I put it on Facebook, and Jonathan was like, I don't want my photo on there.
Wow.
I was like, oh, and he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm a private person. I don't want my
Aw,
photo there.
Good for him for speaking up on that.
Absolutely. So, I put a little emoji laughy face over his
I
face
saw
and
that.
put it up there. And,
Mhm.
that's because it was his choice.
Absolutely.
He understands what
Mhm.
I yet don't after, 49 years of living. My 12-year-old son understands better than I about sharing beyond your comfort level online.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Good for him. So aside from just the aspect of growing up with the internet, we also
Did you go through 9/11?
did I go through? I mean, I wasn't there. I was a child.
I know
I
you
wasn't
weren't there.
like I wasn't
Did
like a
the
small child.
millennials, go through 9/11?
So I was an old enough child to understand that something horrific had happened, but not quite old enough to understand that like I was going to be okay personally, right? So like I remember my dad he was working in I think Schaumburg, but when you're a kid that's Chicago, right?
Mhm.
And I remember calling and sobbing and being like, "Please come home. I want you to be safe. I don't want you to die." And like I remember walking with my friends to like the beach later that day, and I had heard a siren and I had like a full-blown panic attack because I thought something terrible was happening. So I was really affected, but because I wasn't old enough to really understand that that was far away, like I wasn't going to die, um I didn't fully understand what was going on, but I knew it was horrific. I think I was, let's see, you know, so I was 12, so like
Okay, so
yeah.
you're older than I thought you were at that
Yeah.
time. Okay.
Mhm.
So you guys were kids during the dot-com crash.
Mhm.
You were kids during 9/11.
Mhm.
You were slightly older still kids during the mortgage collapse.
Mhm.
So you've seen our financial systems destroy,
Mhm.
our architectural systems and city systems destroy.
Yep.
You've seen our housing structures destroy,
Mhm.
and you've had war for a great portion of your life. an
Absolutely. I
active
have
war.
friends who have passed in that war that came from 9/11. For
And we
sure.
wonder why millennials are like so neurotic about who's planting some roots.
Yeah, well, and then to top it off, we were told that whole time, go to college, go to college, go to college. We went to college, and now we've all accumulated a crazy
Psych.
amount of debt on top of it. So, and then it's like, all right, kid, get out there, make it happen. Why won't millennials just get anything done?
Yeah, but kind of, do they deserve some of the credit for their choice of majors? I mean, they've seen some of these majors come out there. Like, what were you thinking you would do with that line of education?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you from my personal experience, I remember having many trusted adults tell me verbatim, it doesn't matter what you go to college for. As long as you have a degree, you'll make more money than someone who doesn't.
Well, that's an
And I
outright
was
lie.
specifically told that several times. And when I was sitting in the financial aid office of one of the colleges that I actually just finished paying off.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a cool moment for me. I did finally, I took advantage of the forbearance during COVID and just continued to pay off my student loans and really just chipped away at it because I was able to, which was great. But I even remember being told in the office something very similar to that same degree of like, well, your payment's only going to be this much per month. And I mean, it's a known fact that anyone who has a degree makes more money than someone who doesn't. So you should be able to pay it off, no problem every month.
Yeah,
And-
school counselors in the 80s, 90s, and
Yeah.
2000s, I think they should, I'm not going to say, but I will say, when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, we were told similar things. Go to college.
Mhm.
Smart people go to college. Dumb people go to vocational schools or the army, right?
Mm.
That's how it was. That's what
Mhm.
kind of the breakdown was.
Yeah.
And I regret the path I chose going through college without thinking of learning a skill, learning a trade, or even kind of supporting my nation in the army.
Mm.
Or I would probably have done the Marines. They
Mm.
would have kicked my ass. Though. Bleep. the my brother was Marine, but he's hard as
Oh,
nails, my
okay.
brother. So I think the biggest bill of goods ever sold to an entire generation is this: no, don't do vocation school, don't do military service, just go to college and then learn something about, Ecuadorian, feminist studies in underwater sneaker repair, right? And then come out and you are 100% qualified to teach that exact subject to someone else. And that's it.
Yeah.
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 You're a vet, right?
Yes.
What branch did you serve in, Chris?
I served in the U.S. Army as a legal specialist with the 1st Cavalry Division.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
Horses?
Well, there were. They
Really? I was
did.
just kidding.
No, actually, there was a mounted cavalry unit that was for parade purposes,
Aha, okay.
and unfortunately, our brigade, the 2nd Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division, was physically located immediately across the street from the 1st Cavalry Division parade grounds. So when a parade was going on, many people could not access their billets. They couldn't access their headquarters buildings.
Oh, geez.
But actually, at one point, I was the backup announcer while they were looking for a replacement, and I had been volunteered by somebody in the division headquarters. Hey, he's got a voice. He's smart. He can read the script.
Isn't it so crazy when something like that happens? That's happened to me a couple of times as a fellow talker. That's happened to me.
Yeah, it was interesting. The one line that was the key, and led to the mounted cavalry with the buckboard, towing an old field piece, was, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the finest tradition of the United States cavalry, a cavalry charge!" And that, they came firing the revolvers and storming across the parade field mounted, and that was, the end of the parade, or the parade in the military sense, not your 4th of July, but whatever the ceremony would have been, whether it was an awards ceremony or retirement. But yeah, it was when I wasn't sitting in somebody's court martial or preparing an administrative separation for a short period. I was the backup voice.
Very fun.
That's cool. Okay, we have to take a break, so we'll be right back. Join us when we return.
Welcome back to Unlocking Lake County with your host, Dick Barr. Welcome back to Unlocking Lake County with your host, Dick Barr.
And welcome back. This is, oops, there we go. Welcome back. This is your host, Dick Barr, here with Unlocking Lake County, with Christin Kaufman.
Hello, everybody.
And guest in the studio, Chris Henning. Say hello.
Hello again.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about, we got a little off tangent, but we were talking about multi-generational housing and why it's important, why it's needed, and some of the benefits. And we'll talk about some of the cons too. Specifically speaking, in kind of in most of Lake County, there's not a lot of options for it. We don't have 2 flats for the most part. We got some duplexes, but those are all individual owned properties. They're not necessarily, kind of multi-family. They're multi-family, but they're not multi-generational family homes. You could buy both sides of a duplex, but there are very few products out here where you can just go and buy a single product. And then your family's living in there. And as Sly has mentioned in the past, this kind of concept of golden handcuffs, people buying decisions based on, well, we might be stuck in there for a long time, especially with high rates. So might as well make something that'll work for us in the long term. So kind of go over some of the benefits first. So financial savings, right?
Of course.
That's the most obvious.
Absolutely. Shared expenses. Have you have a large family, Christin? I do. I'm the oldest of 7.
Oldest of 7. That's a lot of responsibility.
It sure is. That's why I am the way I am. Have you ever noticed how bossy I am?
No, never.
No. Okay.
No. I'll ask Rob. He might be able to have.
He's
an
an oldest too, so honestly, he'll probably be like, "No, she's fine."
How many siblings he have?
He's the oldest of 4.
So nothing like you.
Not quite the same. No, I have 1 sister, 5 brothers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. That's. And then your sister, is she the youngest?
No, she's one of the middle.
Oh, she is one of the middle. Okay. Did you grow up in a patriarchal type home?
What do you mean?
Where boys rule and girls drool, and we're gonna make this painful for you?
I grew up in a super religious home, so yes, but not in the fun way.
Okay. Well, I wasn't implying it was fun. I think it was, but yeah, but I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I should have said, did you grow up in a misogynist home where you're stupid because you're a girl?
Well, I grew up in a super religious home, so yes, but not in the fun way.
Okay, fair enough.
But that being said, my family does partake in some multi-generational living, absolutely. So one of my brothers is raising his family, and he lives with my mom, and there's a lot of shared expenses there, shared responsibility. It works out really well for them, actually.
So, okay, so what about the aspect of having someone there who's got your back?
Exactly, the shared responsibility part. That's what I mean. I mean, whenever his little girls need something, and he works a lot, and if his partner ends up needing some help with some things, or she just needs a break, or she needs and someone else is at the house, they're able to help each other out without it being a big deal because they're already there.
And so that just obviously goes to show that there's a big thing. I'm just going to go back. Sorry, I'm sidetracking a little bit because you've got me thinking. So when I was raised, we grew up close to family. We didn't live in the same home, but we grew up close to family. And I got to say, it was always nice having cousins come over, the uncles and aunts coming over. My brother's 14 years, my senior, he went into the Marines. And when he came out, he quickly bought a house literally right across the street from us.
That's so cool.
And that was back in 1980 when interest rates were crazy. And he bought it on a land contract for like nothing. The guy just basically gave it away. And so he had kids right away. So I had my nephews and nieces who were only 5 years younger than me. They felt more like cousins than nephews and nieces.
Yeah, that exists in my family too. With my youngest sibling being 17 years younger than me, he's only, I want to say, maybe 5 or 6 years older than my oldest niece, and they're besties.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool having that family, and it was always comfortable. Now I moved here, and I live in Illinois. I'm nowhere near my family. Grew up in New York. And, I don't have that closeness of family. And I would say I miss it. And I miss it for my kids, too. So sometimes once, sometimes twice a year, we go back home to New York, and my folks are gone, but I still hang out with my sister and my brother, and all the nephews and nieces and their kids now,
Hmm.
and it's kind of great. And I sometimes find myself pining for how cool it would have been to live with family right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can visit all you want, but it's never going to be quite the same as that constant, familial, comfortable environment that gets created when family is all nearby with each other. 100%. My niece, one of the nieces that live in that multi-generational home, is 3 weeks younger than my oldest daughter, and those two are also best friends. So my first home that I purchased was in that same neighborhood. We were less than a mile from each other, so I'd walk over all the time. We were with each other all the time. It was great.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
What about the downsides?
Of the multi-generational living?
Yeah.
The biggest one that I observe is, so when you become an adult, and especially when you have your kids, you start to want to be the adult, right? And you want to make decisions about your life, and that turns into wanting to make decisions about your home. So the biggest challenge that I seem to observe with at least this specific situation is sort of this headbutting of like, who's like, well, this is my house still. So there's sort of like this my house, my rules. Thing, which is completely fair, right? So like my mom's home is her home, and if she wants things to be a certain way, sometimes there's a little bit of butting heads when it comes to that. So that sort of lack of
Power struggle.
Yeah, power struggle. I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah, because no one's necessarily in the wrong, so to speak, but there's definitely a power struggle. And I imagine that one of the challenges, if you're not at the top of that multi-generational family living situation, is that lack of independence, maybe,
Sure.
or the lack of feeling of independence. There's also this sort of narrative that I have noticed, honestly, since I turned 18, where you have this like, oh, you still live with your parents, where it's like some sort of failure, like you're a failure if you don't live on your own. But like I've told people all the time, because I moved out when I was 18 in a day, basically, for the first time. I came back a couple of times, but I moved out right away, and I learned really quickly how quickly the novelty of having your own place wears off when you're broke all the time. And I told all of my friends when I came back, I said, listen, if you're living in a safe situation where you can just continue living there, oh my God, just continue living there. Do not move out yet. Like, having your own place is fun for a little bit, but it's only so fun when you're eating ramen and you can't afford to go anywhere.
Okay, so I think you and I have ideological differences on this,
Okay.
because I hear everything you're saying,
Mhm.
and I'm guilty of being one of those people who have made fun of people who 35-year-old living in their mother's basement.
Sure.
Right? I'm on that list of.
It's low hanging fruit. It's easy to judge that.
Sure, yeah. I'm one who was out when I was 18. I quickly went out and moved to Manhattan, lived there on my own, and I hear you. Imagine having no money in Illinois. Okay, now imagine having no money in New York City.
Yeah, I mean, I moved straight to Chicago, so I understand.
Yeah.
At least a little bit.
Back in 1993 on the west side, upper west side of Chicago, living a block away from the Dakota building. Dakota building, some of our listeners will know, is where John Lennon was shot.
Mm.
It's a very nice area. It's not the Upper East Side. That's just,
Sure.
Stupid rich. It's the Upper West Side, it's more cultural.
Like trendy, right?
Yeah, well, I would.
All of my New
maybe.
York knowledge is from like Sex and the City, so.
Okay. Yeah, I would say like the Village is trendy. I
Okay.
wouldn't have classified Upper West Side, but there might be some who do. And I think it has gotten more trendy over time.
Okay.
But I had nothing. And
Yeah.
I remember, I think the statute of limitations is over, so I can say this. I would steal apples. I would walk to work or school, and I would steal apples from the carts on the side of the street, and I would eat them. And that would be sometimes what I ate all day.
Sure.
I remember one time I had one box of macaroni and cheese left, the kind from, where you it's got the powder cheese and you make milk with it, and,
Sure.
The little elbow macaronis. And they were 99 cents, I think, maybe 49 cents, but I had one left. I didn't have a dime to my name. And I usually had to make them last a long time.
Mhm.
This particular box I made last 3 days.
Wow.
The third day I was getting paid, so I just threw it out because I knew I was getting paid that day. I worked at FAO Shores, the toy store, and I got my paycheck. I went to a currency exchange. I cashed it immediately, and instead of going to get a meal like a normal human being, I stopped by a 3-card money station on the street. A 3-card money is a scam that scam artists will play, and you think you can win. And my check, I remember this, the cash I had was $160. My first bet was 80. because I used to do 3-card money,
What?
and I knew it, and I didn't know the scam. I know the sleight of
Okay.
hand. I didn't know the scam. There's a scam part of it too, and lost my first bet for 80, second bet for 80, and I'm like, crap, and I don't even have that third of a portion of macaroni and
Oh my
cheese to get me
gosh.
through the next week. So I've been there, and
Yeah.
I understand that. But to me, I'd rather be free and poor than rich and under someone else's thumb. I believe in individual responsibility. I believe in individual freedoms. I believe that we are all at our best when we're all working together, even if not in the same direction, when we're all creating that opportunity for independence and freedom. To me, that's huge.
And, I was of the same mindset when I moved out. So I completely understand that. And I mentioned that I came and went a couple of times because I always had that same longing for independence and freedom, right? I felt very similar, but my advice was different than what I was living, right? Because anytime my friends were talking about wanting to get a place, I'm like, don't do that. Save your money. Save your money. Get a place when you're ready to like move out. Don't do it just for the sake of it. Don't be like me. I just want to have my own place. But there are a lot of other benefits to doing the multi-generational living. I remember, as I mentioned, my daughter and my niece are the same age. And I remember when I had my baby, I went through a period of postpartum depression, and I found the entire concept of motherhood as a brand new mother very overwhelming at the beginning. A lot of fear. What if, and my brother's partner was living with my mom. And even though we probably had the same amount of help from my mom, the part of me that wasn't living there was so resentful of the fact that my brother's partner had help all the time, had someone living within the same home that they could just like ask for help right away without having to call. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be benefits to having other adults when you've got children involved, especially in those early stages.
But I'm going to shoot a hole in that, because when you have multiple adults, what else do you have multiple of? Vehicles, right? How do you do multiple vehicles?
That was a real struggle over there too. 100%.
Yeah. And the way parking regulations are, a lot of communities, you can't park on the street. Back in the day when you would have like these flats, it was alley parking. You park in your alley, you could get 4 or 5 cars in there.
Yeah.
Today in the modern homes, most of them are kind of that 2-lane asphalt driveway. You're not allowed to park on the grass. You might not be able to park overnight in the street.
And you can't block the sidewalk.
And you can't block the sidewalk. Absolutely.
So even though you technically have that whole driveway, you don't really have that whole driveway.
Right, but you got to take care of the front part. You just don't own it.
Yeah, they would utilize that front part of the driveway and just parallel parks a car there.
Right. Yeah.
You
Sure.
do what you got to do.
Luckily, in our parkway, you could fit a full-size car.
Yeah.
You can fit a full-size in our parkway because there's a big difference. Big space between the sidewalk and the curb. Anyway, so parking is a challenge,
100%.
right?
Not to
Now,
mention your utilities are significantly more expensive.
sure, yeah, but there's an economy of scale.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, your water will go up, but and your electric use in the individual spaces will go up, but the electrical use in the common spaces won't. So there's an economy of scale there. The heating is probably economy of scale as well.
Yeah.
Right. You get 50 people in there. It's probably not costing more to heat. Might cost more to cool, depending on, how sweaty everyone is.
Sure.
But definitely water prices. And water price is very expensive up here. But definitely economy of scale on the taxes and economy of scale on the actual mortgage payments or whatever, if there's rent involved. So the other issue is that a lot of communities out here don't have the proper zoning for it to allow it. And they have specific restrictions on the number of people who can occupy a certain residence. Did you know that?
I did.
And then a lot has to do with also water. Based on the size of the pipe coming into your house is what could dictate how many people can live in the house.
That I didn't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, you couldn't just go and put a 4th or a 5th bedroom in your house if you wanted to. Even if you went and got a permit, they would tell you, no, that's too many bathrooms, and you have to have a bigger pipe for water coming in the house. Probably really because they want to restrict how many people live in your house. Right?
Sure.
Because they don't want cars parked everywhere.
Another challenge that I just thought of, though, when it comes to multi-generational living. So In the event that you have several generations living in one house, I mean, obviously, depending on what the like if they're what the setup is for later on down the road, right? But that means that only one person's building that equity.
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're missing out on that opportunity for your own personal growth. Now, depending on if something's being left to you, obviously that changes from family to family. But
Yeah, and
you're
we've
not
seen where there's
taking that
been a lot
opportunity.
of consternation between heirs
Mm-hmm.
when there's multiple siblings
Yeah.
and it's passed down to one of the
Yeah.
heirs.
Absolutely. Not to mention, I mean, we live in a society where plenty of people have been divorced and remarried and they have children from previous marriages. And that gets even stickier then. Who gets what?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the home being left behind.
Yeah. So basically, we're pretty much out of time for this. I think we kind of pretty much covered it, but I'd like to know your opinions. What do you think? Is multi-directional housing the way of the future, or is it a relic from the past that we don't need to get into? So give us your comments online, and or if you see us in the supermarket, stop Christin and tell her what you think about
Absolutely.
multi-generational housing.
Tell me right to my face.
Okay, we're going to take one more break, and we'll be right back with Chris Henning. Give me 1 second here, actually. Yeah, because I have to do this and then say something interesting, Christin.
I can hum the song.
That is work. Yeah, my track. I didn't let it queue up properly. So after the last one. Okay, now we'll be back.
Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr will return in just a few moments after these important messages. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to Unlocking Lake County with your host, Dick Barr.
Hello. This is Dick Barr, your host of Unlocking Lake County, here with Christin Kaufman
Hey.
and special guest in the studio, Chris Henning.
Hello, and thank you again for having me.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thanks, especially. I really enjoy when you guys come early, so you can kind of be a part of the whole conversation.
We're not live on Facebook.
Give me 1 second. It looks like I gotta. No, we should be. You might just be delayed. Yeah, the feed is going live.
Oh, right.
You see it yet?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. It sometimes takes a minute because there's a little bit of a delay. I like when you're part of the conversation because we get to know each other a little bit better before we get into the hard meat of the interview.
Ooh.
So Chris,
Yes.
you are running for state representative in the 59th district.
Yes.
Sorry, I said it as a statement, but yes, it was more of a kind of a question. Remind the listeners or anyone just joining in, what geography does that encompass?
Yes. It's a suburban, primarily Lake County district, running from Park City in the north through a small portion of Waukegan, down sort of along the Tri-State Tollway. Incorporating Green Oaks, parts of Libertyville, parts of Mundelein, parts of Vernon Hills, a little bit of Lincolnshire, a significant portion of Buffalo Grove down into Wheeling and Cook County.
Oh, so you do touch Cook?
It does go into a little bit of Cook County, the western side of Milwaukee, just south of, it goes just a little bit south of Dundee.
And what made you decide to throw your hat in the ring?
I like that you use the term "throw your hat in the ring." People have asked me why that's on my signs.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is the 94th Aero Squadron, a version or imagining of the 94th Aero Squadron's hat in the ring. The specific reasons it was a culmination of watching policy after policy, act after act within the state. I don't remember the final trigger, looking, whether it was looking at my grocery bill or my bill when I filled up the gas tank,
Or your property tax bill?
The property tax bills in Lake County are astronomical.
Now, give me a second on this one, because sometimes I see people push back when someone running for state office mentions property taxes. I've seen people push back and say, "Well, the state has nothing to do with property taxes," and I think that's BS.
Well, the state policies are going to always affect what the county can do, among other things.
Yep.
And the other taxing authorities can do.
In addition to the mandates.
Yes. Well, they're going to mandate programs, but they're not going to fund the programs. So your municipality, your township, your county now needs to come up with a means to fund those mandated programs. And that's going to be coming through taxation in one form or another, whether it's the property tax levies, whether it's a use tax on some service, whatever vehicle is used, it's going to increase your taxes, and the state can then claim, plausible deniability. We didn't increase the tax; it was somebody else. But the policies there dictated it. It sounds great that the state removes the grocery tax, and I think it's a good thing not to be taxed. However, there was a portion of each municipality's revenue stream that was generated or provided through the state's food sales tax. Now, municipalities, Mundelein has already enacted an ordinance to increase their local tax. Other municipalities have or are in the process of doing so. So the state can make a claim that, hey, isn't this great? We reduced this, but you're not realizing the saving.
Game.
Yes, a shell game is a great description for it.
Look at, school funding is a big thing. In Illinois, we're probably one of the lowest state-funded schools in the country. most of our school funding comes from local taxes, like 80 to 90%, depending on the district you're in.
Yeah, and the education system right now is, I think, largely broken. You've got the Chicago Teachers Union has their hands not only in the city, but trying to currently negotiate contract terms that will affect statewide, with the costs of the programs they're trying to incorporate into their employment contract. And they're dishing out money to candidates in the local elections in the suburbs as well. You have
So wait, so you're saying the Chicago Teachers Union is giving money to candidates statewide?
well, I can't tell you all of them. I can say that having seen recently a number that my opponent has received $500 in a donation, not huge compared to others, but the candidate running against Tase Ufadike in I can't remember the district number off the top of my head.
Probably 51.
From Palatine up through Hawthorne Woods.
Yep.
They donated $5,000 to her campaign. But that's again the sort of the pay to play Illinois policy. But again, you're getting the school districts. Mundelein recently is seeking a ballot initiative with the schools to make another significant improvement at the high school. But the school should be teaching. You can teach with what they have. Let's get the numbers up. Currently, as of last fall, Mundelein High School had a 66% of the students not meeting the math standard for grade.
66% not meeting?
Not meeting. 73% English, and still had a graduation percent of 90. If you were to look at Stevenson High School, arguably the number one high school in the state, they have 74% completing math at grade level, 72% at English. Again, these were numbers from last fall. I'm not sure if they've been updated.
So there's no confusion to the listeners. The numbers you're giving now are proficient. The numbers you gave before were not proficient. Okay.
I had to look and make sure that I had a negative sign as opposed to a positive.
Okay.
And Stevenson is graduating 96%. You can go to Wheeling High School. Wheeling is 69%. I'm sorry, 69% not proficient with math, 74% not sufficient with English, and
Those
graduating
are huge numbers.
94%. Yes, there are. And if you're going to be asking for money to improve the education, get these children educated, I'm not as opposed, but let's get people that can do the reading, that can do the math. Those are the basic skills you need to survive in society.
So what do you think, let's say, and I'm only going to use it as an example because you did. So what could Mundelein do different to increase its proficiency amongst its students?
Well, I would start looking to start getting back to the basics of traditional education. Stick to, get the basics done before you start trying to expand. I think we need to get more of a focus on critical thinking. I believe there's too much indoctrination going on. I can remember in 2008, I was a substitute teacher on election day at Mundelein High School, and for some reason I was at a Spanish class. I had to start I believe they were watching Finding Nemo in Spanish, while the teacher was off doing whatever they had to do that they needed a substitute, and having a student come up and ask, "Who did you vote for?" And my reply was, it's not my place to tell you who to vote for. What your teacher should be doing is teaching you how to examine the issues, what to look for, and you make a decision based on your life experience. All of us are going to have different experiences. We will
Right.
see things in different ways. I'm not going to fault you for making one choice versus another necessarily because of this or that, but you should be able to make an intelligent, informed choice. And the response I'd had from the student was, but my teachers had told me I should vote for Obama. To me, that's wrong. Again, they should be teaching.
Not the choice, the fact that there was a dictate
There was a
of
dictate
choice.
of choice.
Right.
And these are people that are trusted. These are the people that are influencing their growth, their advancement into maturity, and they're dictating what you should be choosing, not telling you here are the issues, here's the pros, here's the cons on both sides of the issue. Weigh those against your personal views, your how you were raised, how.
So basic critical thinking skills.
Yes. And
Okay.
I fear too much of that is lost in education right now.
Okay.
In the public sphere, I can't say can't say to the same extent in private education.
Do you feel there's overlap of maybe redundancy in expenses because we have so many different school districts?
Yes, I would say that there is. I would think that you could get better economy of scale with some consolidation, much like the overlapping township, county, municipal aspects as they apply. Again, you're going to have certain elements of waste that are produced by the redundancies.
Right. Like how
within
many
the system.
times does a county truck drive past a township's road before it drops its plow to hit a county road?
That and so many more examples.
Right.
They're just there's a lot of waste, and you want to start saving some money. Start looking realistically at where some of the waste, some of the redundancies can be removed.
And just like in our conversation about multi-generational housing, if we consolidate for economy of scale, we do give up something, right? We give up some local control, we give up some power, we give up some ability to affect the here and now locally. Now, I'm a big proponent that my local government is the most important government in my life. Like they're the ones that directly affect me every day. And I think I want them having more power than the state has. Like I never liked on the county board how the county would make a sweeping decision that affected every township in town in Lake County. When you have people in Lake Forest or Deerfield or Highland Park deciding what people in Antioch can put in a fire pit. I don't think that's right. I think that should be locally controlled.
I'm not opposed to that. I do agree with your premise that the group that you're going to have the most personal interaction with is going to be your municipality. They're ultimately the ones that you're going to look to first. Who's plowing your streets? Who's patching your streets? Who's dealing with the floods and the drains as a first step? Now it might be a drain on a state road.
Right.
But the person you're going to interact with first is at the municipal level. If you're unincorporated, you're going to be going to the county.
Right.
But the overarching, again, it's gotten to a point where I think a lot of things are too paternalistic, where we're getting government in Illinois at many levels, especially in Cook and the Collar counties, that are not looking at the more specific needs of the smaller groups, the ones who have the better idea of what's needed to improve the lives of the citizens in their communities. The state does the same. A number of the laws are overreaching. I would say that many of them are reactionary without considering the consequences of the policies they're putting into place.
I remember several years ago they passed a law and that they mandated a minimum salary for teachers across the state. And a lot of teachers looked at that as a huge win. And some part of me says, well, that's a great win for teachers in certain areas. But there's places where that minimum salary was way above median salary in some parts of down south, and it created huge hardships for the funding mechanism and property taxes of those school districts. And I'm not going to say this. I was going to say I thought I heard about some school districts who had to close and consolidate with other county, other areas because of it, but I don't know that to be a fact. So that I would be a complete lie if I said that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that specific legislative mandate, but again, the number of unfunded mandates coming out of Springfield is not good for the local community.
For those who don't know, an unfunded mandate is basically a law passed in Springfield that's going to cost money, and the Springfield demands the local, whether it be the school, the county, the municipality, something that they must do, but they don't give them the money to do it, so then they have no choice but to go to the taxpayers for it.
And then you see your state saying, hey, this is great. We removed this, or we told them to provide you this service, but not telling you what it's going to cost.
Right.
You have most recently the wonderful concept of removing the tax on groceries in the state of Illinois. Absolutely agree. It shouldn't be. But what you may not realize is that your municipalities were relying on a portion of those funds that were generated through the sales tax of food. Now there's shortfalls in all of the municipal budgets due to this being stricken. So your municipalities are now going to step in and increase their taxes to make up for that money. So you've got somebody in Springfield who can claim that isn't this a great thing that we did for you, while the actual result is not necessarily a net positive for the individual citizens.
Hey, we took away your 1% grocery tax. By the way, you owe us 8 more cents in gas tax. Just saying.
Well, Illinois' gas tax is ridiculous, and again, the foolish, as many people will have realized from this past winter, the sort of push to follow California and the elimination of internal combustion vehicles, the electrical vehicles. The technology doesn't exist at this point to make them a very viable alternative in all situations.
The technology nor the infrastructure to support it and supply it with energy.
Correct. So you can make it this, aren't we doing this wonderful thing? But if you ever looked at what needed to produce the batteries for those vehicles, and where is the power, the electricity actually coming from? In the majority of instances, it's fossil fuels or nuclear. It's not carbon free. It's just not coming out of your tailpipe.
What do you think of nuclear?
I think that it's potentially a viable option. I think that the technology has improved over the years since 3 Mile Island. I don't know the specifics of cost. I believe that you do have an opportunity to potentially get an actual positive result out of it. I have done the math in the past relative to wind turbines, which never pay for themselves. Without government subsidies, it's a lost business. Plus, there's more and more evidence of the environmental damage coming from them. Solar, if you're looking at that as an alternative in northern Illinois, where is this really a practicality with our fall and winter weather?
Right. Don't get us started on solar panels. As realtors, we're not the biggest proponents of it. But you have the pleasure of being in your audience a young millennial female, and I'm sure in your district you have a lot of young millennial females. What can you offer to that constituent base that would make them want to vote for you?
Well, I can offer them my efforts to try and improve the lives of their children as they come of age, trying to ensure that they have safe streets, that their education will be an actual education. I do believe there's value in vocational schools. I do believe that there's value in the military. I was in the military. I paid off my student loans in the military.
Oh.
There is a lot out there that we can take value in, but our streets can be much safer. Our education can be much better.
Do you mean in terms of crime?
In terms of crime,
Okay.
particularly in terms of crime, they could also be safer in having roads that aren't
Yeah,
potholes.
I didn't know which way you meant. If you meant like the actual physical streets, or
No, but it can be done both ways. But again, if you're going to argue for some of those, you have to understand that they're costs. What also can be done is a look at creating a more fiscally sound, more fiscally solvent environment. We got to get away from a state and local governments, taxing and taxing and taxing. Oh, we're going to give you this. We're going to give you this. You have to realize that you have so much money, and just like you as a household, you can only spend what you have. We've got so much redundancy in government. We have so many people that are redundant employees that it just the waste that could be stripped out, the overburdensome regulation. We need regulation. Nobody's going to claim that we don't need a regulation-free society. That would be ridiculous. But there are times we start getting down to regulating minutia that is not sanely conceptual as being responsible. It's fiscally not possible to do in any manner, yet people want to keep thrusting the additional regulations.
Let me, if I may, so Christin, I hate to put you on the spot.
Okay.
No, Christin, not
well,
Chris.
yeah, but he's gonna.
Christin, young mother, you're a professional.
I am.
What is in the way of you living your perfect life here in Illinois? Is there anything in your way? And what are your big concerns?
If there is there anything in my way, and what are my big concerns? I mean, truthfully, one of my biggest concerns as someone who has a special needs child in the public school, is making sure that schools have the proper funding to make sure that they are able to afford professional assistants, paraprofessionals who have the proper training and they can afford to pay quality paras, right? My daughter specifically had a very unfortunate experience with a completely inexperienced paraprofessional, and it was very traumatic for her. And it took that school 6 months just to find that one. And it's just not in the budget to have quality help for special needs kids in the public school system. Also making sure that, that's why I asked if you meant specifically about crime, right? Because, I mean, we have access to the internet. We're able to see all of the scary stories of things that are happening, and not just in the areas that you would, kind of dismiss because you expect it there. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And I don't think that that's necessarily different than before. Crime has always happened everywhere to an extent, but we're aware of it now, right? So we're constantly aware of the dangers every time we go to do literally anything.
I gotta. I want to respond to that real
Sure.
quick, and I'm sorry, Chris,
No.
No problem.
because you said something that it's not necessarily more crime. We're just aware of it more. I don't agree with that. I look at what's happening as a result of the Safety Act, and we are seeing major increases in carjacking, major increases in robbery,
Mhm.
major increases in breaking and entering. We just had a situation 2 weeks ago
Yep.
where someone who was given probation for armed robbery right here in
Mhm.
Round Lake Beach
Yep.
was given probation and an ankle bracelet. And while he was on probation, 3 months after his probation, he shot, I don't know the circumstances of how he did it, at 9:30 at night, shot and killed a 15-year-old girl while she
Mhm.
was sitting in her house. And that guy was just let out of jail. We are definitely seeing more crime. We're not just aware of more crime. There's definitely more. And when you have criminals on the street, it's obvious there's going to be more crime.
Yeah, 100%. So to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that there's just as much crime now as there always was. Just saying that I'm not specifically saying that there's now more crime than ever. Just saying that we're definitely more aware of it now than we were in the past. I'm more so talking about how aware of it we are now in contrast to how aware of it we were in the past, not
Sure.
the amount of crime.
Can we go back to your thing, because I agree with you. So you asked, well, you said that one of the things that's an impediment to your family's thriving is the making sure the schools have the resources to provide the proper tools for your
special needs
kids. And not just special needs kids, but you would agree
Yeah.
probably with all kids, right?
For sure, yeah.
To make sure that everyone's covered. So
Mhm.
that's a great question. So Chris, how do you answer that question? How do you make Christin feel comfortable that you don't want to just slash and burn the school budgets?
Well, no, I definitely don't want to slash and burn the school budgets, but I want the money spent efficiently. Where a lot of these high schools, and you're seeing, requests, oh, we want to improve the athletic facilities, we want a new stadium, we want new turf. And as I said before, I want to see the educational skills improved. That money is better spent on the students, getting them educated, getting them the services that they need, rather than necessarily replacing a football field or building an. Hey,
Right.
I went to
priorities.
I went to St. Viator's High School. We didn't have a football field at the high school. We didn't have a track. We had good track runners. We'd run a mile or so to Arlington High School to run on the track and practice handoffs for the relays. But a lot of these things are niceties. They're not necessities.
And one of the challenges we have, and we see it here locally too, is it's very hard for a school district to lose a referendum, because a lot of people feel like, just as Christin said, they think that if you don't give the schools everything they ask for, you're depriving them. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because I agree with you. I think we have to prioritize what needs to happen now. Well, if we have 73% underperforming proficiency in our students, that's priority one. And we have to address that. But I also agree with Christin. We can't cut corners on the issues that provide opportunity for special needs. And then also, right now we've got, I don't know how many people have come across the border, non-English speaking, 16 plus million. The schools need the money to be able to pay to educate those kids. As long as they're going to be in this country, our schools have to have some sort of budget to handle that. How do we address that?
That's very tough question to answer, because you don't, theoretically, they're not participating into the or funneling into the tax revenue. So you now have a larger drain
Right
on the system. To meet those needs, you either need to cut out other services or the niceties.
There you go.
Or
You have choices.
You do. You always have choices, and you need to prioritize those choices. And the students' welfare, the students' education should be paramount in the schools. Having extra nice, brand spanking new science lab is great. It's wonderful. But is that where the money needs to be spent? If your lab is sufficient, do you have the resources to get the things done? Can the money be applied in different ways? And again, it's a matter of evaluating and getting, use the standard phrase, the most bang for your buck. Money's tighter. The inflationary pressures over the last several years have hurt everybody. The costs for all of the educational supplies have gone up. Those are additional strains.
Have you noticed that, Christin? Is it more expensive to go to school now?
I'm sorry, more expensive to go to school now?
Yeah, supplies and then registration fees, things like that. I've seen a lot of people complain, but I don't see that, so I don't know.
It's really hard for me to say. My daughter's only in entering first grade, so this is only our second year with a child in school. So, I mean, the registration fees just kind of are what they are. I'm a millennial. I expect everything to be expensive all the time. I'm never shocked by the price of something.
Isn't that funny?
I do have a clarifying question for you, though,
Sure.
Chris, if you don't mind. So, we had talked about pretty briefly making sure that schools have resources to provide to children who need them. And I heard your response, but I don't think that I understood it the way that you intended, right? Because you immediately jumped to wanting to see economic performance, or no, I'm sorry, educational performance to a certain standard. And I'm almost getting from that, and I have to be wrong about this, so that's why I want to give you the opportunity to clarify. What I'm hearing is I want to see those standards met before schools should be deserving of certain resources.
No. You're definitely correct. That we need to provide the necessities for the students, whether that's through the IEP programs or other. I had children that were on IEPs. Those resources are a necessity.
Absolutely.
Those aren't a nicety. Those aren't new turf on your football field.
Right.
I also am, disappointed at the number of districts looking to remove the resource officers from the schools. I think that is.
Are you talking about the SROs, like the security?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The police
Right.
on site.
Yeah.
I think there's more advantages and benefits to that than a lot of people are willing to accept and admit. Just having that presence there, it gives you a certain element of security, a certain opportunity to discourage certain behaviors. Now, before we sort of delve into some more of this, sort of how crime has expanded, my background, before I went in the Army, I did everything backwards. I had been a police officer before I went into the Army. It didn't like it. It wasn't for me. I then went into the Army, served as a legal specialist.
What didn't you like about it?
I didn't feel that the municipality that I was working in really had the officers' backs. At the time, Cook County, I was in Cook County. Cook County Jail was under a consent decree, and as part of that decree, due to overcrowding at the jail, in essence, if your bail was under $50,000 and you hadn't been arrested on a violent felony, you were given personal recognizance, an I bond, and released. Now, it's something I've said since that point in time. A police officer's only true power, if you're talking in the intellectual sense, is the removal of somebody's freedom, up into the ultimate of taking a life. Your problem is not the average citizen. And you can see this our police department did it. Other police departments have done it. You can take a squad car, turn the radar on, park it at a corner, and you're going to get complaints. People are going to drop their speeds. Most people are not an issue. Most people generally will conform to the law. Your problem is recidivists, the people that repeatedly commit crimes. And when they know there is no power to the police, that they cannot take away your freedom, they cannot restrict your freedom, that they're not going to be supported, they're emboldened. They do what we're seeing in the city of Chicago, what we're seeing in Lake County more and more violent crime, more carjackings. We have efforts have been underway to defund or minimize the funding for the police. People have screamed that they think that the police are abusing their powers. In general, you may find officers that have and will, just like any profession. But they're people who are willing to put their lives on the lines for the citizens of their communities, for the state, and they should be supported. And what you have is prosecutors now also not willing to prosecute. We had, as he was mentioning, the Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhardt not prosecute. What was his name again? It was
Shabornia
Pool. Yet they didn't. And there's a girl, a teenage girl, dead because they didn't take the action. The Safety Act has discouraged, I think, the powers of the police. I think in Lake County and in Cook County, I think that the morale has been lowered among the police and many in the state's attorney's office. I don't think that the majority of the members of the state's attorney's office, the sheriff's department, or the police departments want to be seeing these people back on the streets. Or what you're seeing more and more is these crimes, these repetitive crimes, not even being arrests being made. These are dangerous people. Action needs to be taken.
And then let's just be clear that the Shabornia Pool is the alleged shooter, right? He's been charged with the murder of it. I just want to make sure it's clear because he has not gotten a trial on that yet.
No, well, I
think the murder charge came end of last week.
Yeah, I was trying to look at Mary Cole's press release relative to that. And Mary Cole is running against Eric Reinhardt.
She was in here.
Yeah, we had her on our show.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think she would make my personal opinion is she would make a very good upgrade in the state's attorney's office. But again, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Again, everybody take a look, analyze the issues, and make your choices based on your review and analysis.
I don't think you've convinced our Christin that you've got her back in education, but that's something for you to work on next time.
That's fair enough. I'm willing to listen.
And that's an important thing about politics. When I was in it was miserable. But the part I loved about it was the constituent services side of it. And a lot of people don't realize that constituent services is one of the most important things that your legislator does, because that's where you get things done. And the amount of time they spend actually voting on bills and writing laws, their staff does most of that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our legislators, they're mostly just kind of community-minded people who are engaged in the community, have large networks, large people to talk to, and people feel comfortable to go to and say, hey, here's my problem. What can we do about it? And speaking of community, I know you said you had something going on this weekend, Chris.
Yes. This is not campaign related. This is community related. I've been very active through my time since we moved to Mundelein in 2000. I've coached AYSO soccer for many years in the past. But this Sunday at Santa Maria del Popolo in Mundelein, they're having the Taste of Santa Maria. I will be volunteering there. If you want to meet me, talk to me. You can find me working one of the booths, cooking burgers and brats. Also, Santa Maria del Popolo coming up for our Hispanic community, which is a large part of our Lake County community, will be hosting the Fiesta Patrias in September. I will also be walking in the Buffalo Grove Days Parade Labor Day weekend.
All right.
Oh yeah, is that a big parade?
It's a nice parade. I don't know how. I don't know if I've seen enough communities parades in the last several years to judge it by. This last 4th of July parade on the Sunday after the 4th of July in Mundelein was a torrential downpour. So,
Oh geez.
it affected the crowd there. Walked in the Vernon Hills Parade, which was very nice, very well attended.
If you ever want to travel outside your district and be a part of a great parade, come to the Lake Villa Parade for St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
It is the best. Basically, the whole community goes out. It's such a fun parade, and then you end the parade at the VFW, and then you got the corned beef and cabbage, and then they got the W open. It is such a great time.
That sounds like something to go check out. Come March, if I'm not visiting my daughter in Limerick.
Does she live in Ireland?
Yeah, she married an Irishman and is living in Limerick.
Oh, cool.
Fun.
That's my eldest.
Oh, wow.
See, all the eldest want to move out right away.
I know, right?
We got to get our independence.
Well, you let him go overseas, and I was lucky I didn't get stuck in Wales. I guess I would have loved to.
Okay. Anything else you got, Chris?
Just thank you very much. I would encourage everybody to take a look at the issues, evaluate all of the candidates, make your choices based on educated positions on the issues. And I think you will find that you'll be satisfied with how you vote in the end.
Okay. How about you, Chris? Then anything you want to add?
Multi-generational living is awesome.
That's awesome.
If you're trying to save money, it's a great way to go if you can.
Hey, and if someone was interested in learning more about multi-generational housing and they wanted to talk to you, how would they reach you?
You would call my cell phone or text me at 847-977-6751. I am literally always attached to my phone. So
I've noticed that. You answer at the strangest hours when I text.
It's the part of the job.
Yep, it is. And how about you, Chris? How can people find out more about you?
Well, if you're on Facebook, you can look at the page Vote Henning for 59. And the campaign's website is henningfor59.com.
I thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Unlocking Lake County. I'm your host, Dick Barr, saying thank you. And until next time, we'll see you later.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the heart of our community, exploring the ins and outs of real estate and meeting the people who make Lake County truly remarkable. Remember, every property has a story, and every community member holds a key to unlocking our county's full potential. Don't miss out on discovering more hidden gems and expert insights. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday at 12 noon for another episode of Unlocking Lake County with Dick Barr. Until then, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep unlocking the possibilities that await you in Lake County. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.